Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, the co-author of The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, 15-hour audio DFS masterclass that you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. Join with me as mostly usually is Erik Beimfohr. You got yourself a nice little thing in NBA. I saw, because I was going to start off this podcast by asking. I'm requesting, Erik, that you start losing so I could win again.
Well, I did that. I did that the last 2 days. So hopefully,
No, you did that. You did. I mean, you did that for the predominant amount of the podcast,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, I mean, if you go back, this is the 58th episode, and I know you've been gone for a bunch and had some, interviews or whatever. But most of the time, this podcast is you coming in saying I lost 90% or more, and me saying, oh, I had a small profit. Oh, I was this in there, and then having wins here and there. And then like maybe 2 or 3 times a year, you're like, yeah, well, in the 2 or 3 times a year, I've made more than you have the entire year, and that's kind of the dichotomy of this podcast. So I know a lot of people in the YouTube comment section in the past, it's like, why am I listening to Erik? He loses every week. And it's like, well, because you're playing for 2 or 3 weeks a year that you win big. I mean, I'm pretty much the same way, but with me playing multiple types of contests, I'm more likely to have a small profit here, have something there. Oh, I won $5,000 in soccer. Oh, I did this in MMA or whatever. And you're kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna play like one contest, one lineup in NBA and NFL, and if it works out, I get a lot of money. If it doesn't, just move on to the next slate.
Exactly. And we do have like college basketball starting tonight, and that's one I've mentioned before. Like those are like my guilty pleasures, like college football and college basketball. It's like your soccer, right? I'm never gonna make life-changing money doing that, but I just enjoy it, and that is a little bit more of kind of like you said, just kind of riding a little bit more in the middle. But then like NFL and NBA, yeah, I think it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, and I don't expect that everybody is watching every single episode like of this, right? So I can totally appreciate, the, coming in for 2 straight months or whatever on Mondays and being like, yep, got destroyed yesterday in NFL, or like I think it was, yeah, I had one winning week in the first 7 weeks or something like that, and it's like in tournaments, and it's like it's hard. I think sometimes it's hard. People are so attached to what just happened and short-term results and all that kind of stuff, and it's really hard to like detach yourself from that. I talk a lot about it in like the season-long fantasy football and best ball, and even it applies to like DFS too. It's like every week we have a new guy that's like, oh my God, look at this. Look at Mike Williams. Mike Williams is the new Michael Thomas, right? Like, oh, we got to jam 8K Mike Williams. And like, well, now look, and Mike Williams isn't really like hasn't done anything for a month. And like that same kind of thing applies to like the DFS results. People just want to be like, and that's why the screenshot stuff is like, powerful, I guess, on Twitter and whatnot, because people, oh, look at that. He's good. Look at that. He won. And then like you don't win for 2 months or whatever. People are like, is he really very good? Did he just get lucky or whatever? And so I do think it's like a difficult thing to kind of, for a lot of people to like wrap their head around, that like literally what you described is basically my strategy and how I've lived my life for like 4 or 5 years. It's like you just
But it's really, the same really for me. But I mean, it's the same for me. It's just that I'm playing a lot more slates, a lot more lineups. I have a lot more opportunity to get smaller profits more often, or smaller losses. Like this past week, like you'll be proud of me this past week. So the week before, I played 22 lineups, 0 cashed. Okay, right? This week I played 24 lineups, 1 cashed. It was my one Nick Chubb lineup. It was my one Nick Chubb lineup got me there. No, but maybe you'll be proud of me. I didn't play cash games on DraftKings.
Me either. Look at us. We're growing.
Right. Well, I don't know if you consider that growing, but the thing is that okay, so I played 24 lineups. I played like all the power sweeps, the spies. Mm-hmm. I played 3 lineups into the Wildcat. To make up. So I'm playing in $2,500 or so worth of lineups.
Yeah.
Now I played FanDuel Cash because I can't concentrate on 2 sites at once. So it's like I could play, and also I'm playing a lot of the $1, $2, because I'm not limited there. So I made a little money back I made a small profit on FanDuel. But the difference is that like I cashed one out of 24 lineups out of 2,500. I mean, I cashed it for like $100. I mean, like I lost like 95% of my money on DraftKings, but I wasn't upset. Like my expectation is like, well, I'm playing for first and whatever, and well, I'm not playing. We'll talk about Marquise Brown. Like, I'm not playing way over owned Marquise Brown for some odd reason, and he gets there in overtime, and just yeah, the two main games that I targeted. Were the two games where both teams didn't even hit the combined team total of one of the teams,
Yep.
and it's just like I'm fine accepting that, but to me it was so much more. It was easier mentally. I think that's a better way of putting it. Easier mentally to just like I went into Sunday morning. I didn't care about the cash construction. I didn't care. Like I knew what like cash constructions there could be, but I'm not
Yeah.
sweating some 2v2 decision that's going to make the difference of $10,000 in cash volume,
Yeah.
right? I'm not sweating. Do I play Chubb in cash? Who do I play out of these 5K receivers? Do I play Landry? Do I play Higgins? Do I play Tony? Do I play
Yep.
Cooper? I'll go to Albert O. I play the Chiefs defense. Do I play the 49ers defense instead on a 2v2? Do I play Lamar in cash? Yes, you're probably playing Lamar in cash, but do you play Eckler? Do you play Elliott? Do you go up twice? Do you play Tyreek Hill? Like, and you look at these lineups and they're all within 1 point of each other. And it's like,
Right.
well, the difference of some 2v2 or 3v3 that is completely viable, that is most likely going to be duped in double ups. I'm going to be on one of these trains, and one of the trains is going to win, and one of the trains ain't going to win. And it's going to be the difference of whether or not I make 6,000 or lose 8,000. And it's like, what if I just take that out and just like I don't even have to worry about that whatsoever, and just focus on like, well, I don't mind playing Cortland Sutton, right? Like just like I'm playing this the Broncos Cowboys game, right? I'm playing Dak, I'm playing Teddy Bridgewater in
Yep.
this game, and I'm pairing like, okay, Bridgewater, Sutton, Alberto, Bridgewater, Judy, Alberto,
Yep.
Dak, Cooper, Schultz with Cortland Sutton as the bringback or something to get leverage off of
Hmm.
Albert O with the tight end position and Amari Cooper this way off of Zeke Elliott who is chalk. So like, and these lineups all project well. I mean, it's like I'm not playing lineups
Yep.
that like I look at Cortland Sutton's projection is like 2 points lower than like Marquise Brown. And I'm like, I have Marquise Brown at 18% ownership, which he came out way low higher than that. But I
Way.
had him at
Yeah.
18 and overowned, and I had Sutton at like 6%, and he came in at 4. So I'm like, for the range of outcomes, should one guy be 3 times more owned? And Sutton's obviously in the game that I'm targeting. Judy's under 10%. So like, I'm just focused on that. I'm not focused on like, should I be playing Amari Cooper in cash over Jarvis Landry in order to go up to the 49ers defense or something? Like, who cares about any of that, right? FanDuel, I pretty
Yep.
much press a button to pretty much play, and I go, okay, I need to choose between one of these three lineups, right? And I choose, okay, I'm going to choose this one, and there you go, I'm done. Uh, so, like from a mental state, I lost the same amount of money. I mean, I lost in GPPs. I lost the same amount of money,
Right, but less
but
overall.
less overall. I mean, I could have won in cash, right? If I won in cash, I probably would have made 6 grand, would have made up for $2,500 worth of GPP losses, and it'd be like, okay, that's fine. But when you lose cash and GPP, it's like, well, that's a $12,000 loss day. I'm
Yeah.
like, do I want to deal with that when like, what's the upside on these cash games when I'm just joining trains in these double ups? And yes, I could play head to heads, but it's not the first month of the season anymore. I mean, you see the lobbies are getting smaller and sharper,
Hmm.
and people are going broke, right? So cashing one out of 24, like I'm just like, okay, move on to next. I mean, just like I just move on to next. Once Nick Chubb has the 670-yard touchdown, I think I may have him in one or two lineups, and I got him in one lineup. It's like, okay, but I got him in the lineup with the fucking Dak Prescott and the Cowboys putting up nothing. And So it's like, okay, whatever. And like, but mentally, I'm able to accept that. I mean, I've been doing that in NBA also.
Yep.
Like I've been just like, I'm gonna play 10 lineups, 20 lineups, right, type of thing. I don't care about the cash. I don't care about the cash construction. I see who. Yes, I see who projects well. I see most. Who's going? What out of the 8 people you could roster? I know like the 14 guys that you should have in cash games.
Right.
Just depending on what construction of those 14 you do, and depending on that construction determines whether or not you win or lose. Essentially. Uh, but then I don't have to worry about that. I could just on yesterday's slate. I didn't play yesterday's slate because I was at Monday Night Raw for wrestling, and like Drummond was chalk, and then like all these Sixers value was like dude, I was like, I've no problem just Xing out all these Sixers except for Drummond, and then playing
Yep.
other like $4,200 guys instead of playing Shake Milton or Furkan Korkmaz or. But in cash, you don't do that. In cash, you don't think that way. Cash, you just like cash, you think the opposite. It's like, why don't I just jam in all the Sixers and not have to worry about it, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like, but this is more. I'm describing more of what you go through on a day to day, where it's just like yesterday's NFL. I'm assuming you didn't do well.
No, God, no.
Okay, so you're about the same as me, but but you're doing even less lineups than me. You're doing
Mm-hmm.
1 to 3 lineups, and you're like, I'm betting on this, and if it doesn't come in, then I just close my laptop and wait till next week, and that's it.
Yeah, I played 3 Teddy teams.
Oh, all
Um,
3 of the Teddy teams.
Three Teddy teams. So I focused in really tightly on the. So actually thought it was kind of an talked about on Sunday morning, like a fairly wide open slate. But I thought that then outside basically of the Lamar thing and what, like you said, we'll get to the Hollywood. This feels like it's deja vu every week of just replace a new wide receiver with whoever
The,
this guy
but
is that we show up.
I don't think this is similar. I said this on the pregame show for
Mhm.
Pittman the week before. Pittman was a cash play. I mean, Pittman, I
Yeah.
understood, like at his price for the context of that slate. There were like
Hmm.
4 other guys in that range, and I ranked Pittman like 4th or 5th out of that. But it was no chance in anywhere where Marquise Brown. We go to the double up ownership. Like Marquise Brown wasn't played in cash games. I mean, like
No.
it wasn't that type of situation where it's like someone gets steamed up because they're viable in cash games. I mean, I thought he was over owned at 18%. So like, and I thought Lamar Jackson was over owned at 16%. Like when the cards flipped over at 1 o'clock and I saw Lamar Jackson like in the SPY, for instance, or the power sweep. I'm looking at the SPY. The SPY is a single entry contest, right? 100K to first. Lamar was
Hmm.
29% owned and Marquise Brown was 36% owned. When I look at that, I look at all my lineups with like the other guys in that range, like and because I have them sprinkled everywhere: Higgins, Landry, Cooper, Tony, and obviously I got Judy and Sutton in there. I got Waddle in
Yep.
there. I got
Yep.
I take a look at the Austin. I took a look at the Zeke Elliott ownership. He's coming in at like 25%. So I'm like, okay, the running backs are going to be as expected. But Nick Chubb came in the SPY at 25%, and I had him
Yeah.
at like 22. So I'm like, I look at my lineups and I go, like, I'm like, what am I changing? Like I faded the Lamar stacks purposely because I thought that at what I projected was overowned. Right, so
Yeah.
then I'm going to play Josh Allen. I'm going to play Dak Prescott. I'm playing Derek Carr. I'm playing Jacoby Brissett, Dolphin stacks. I'm playing Teddy Bridgewater the other side of the Cowboys game, and I'm going. I look at my ownership and I'm like, I love my ownership. Like I think I made the right decision, which I still do think I made the right decision. If I would have known that Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown were going to be 30+% owned, like it makes it even easier. Just like okay, now I know I'm not going to have. I'm just if it beats me, it beats me. Whatever,
Yep.
and it beat me.
Yeah. Badly. Yes, very badly it beat me. But I feel the exact same way. I went in with kind of a plan of attack when, like you said, we always talk about when you flipped over the cards. I actually felt even better. I used some Amari and I was legitimately worried about him because I was playing Albert O as part of my stacks, and then I'm like, I'm obviously weighing all this like cumulative ownership. I'm weighing all the leverage across my teams, and I'm thinking through exactly like you said. That okay, we have the Zeke thing, but all week it's like, every single you couldn't listen to a show or whatever, and people didn't say, "Oh, DraftKings just really screwed up making Amari Cooper 5,700." So that's like stuck in my head, and I felt like I was leveraged enough, so I did play him some, and so, but like when we flipped over the cards, I'm like, I think in the 4K, Amari was like 15% at 5,700, and like you said, and Hollywood's double that. So I was like, and like Judy's fine, Sutton's fine, and then I had like some late game stuff set up in some other spots. I played Devontae Booker in the Giants defense. That was a kind of a stand I wanted to take as well, and I kind of rotated around some of this stuff, and like, I don't know. I feel like we show up. Some weeks we show up and I'm like, yeah, either I didn't feel comfortable, or I made this mistake, or I could have done this differently. And I feel like, I don't know. Like you said, I feel like I played fine. Did I play perfect? No, you probably never play perfect, but like, did I play fine? Yeah. And if you wanted to say, right, like the week that I had a good week in NFL, it's like, if you like, I played that Pittman chalk, right? I played Pittman, AJ Brown, and I think Henderson was chalky that week. And if you wanted to say, like, to me, like, well, I ate the Lamar and Hollywood chalk, but I did this. You're like, I get it. That's fine.
But there was no the problem with this slate. There was no this.
There was no
right. That to me, everything was
other leverage.
Right. Everything was so spread out that I take a look at. Take a look at the projected ownership, and I see everything spread out. I see like that, like there's no one that's like, other than paying up at running back.
Yeah,
I saw Eckler, Elliott, and Chubb, and Chubb wasn't that much of a pay up option, but he would still pay up.
Yep.
And I'm like, I want to pay down at running back.
Same.
Which led me to playing a lot of Booker and Jacobs in that game, and also led me to play a lot of Chase Edmonds. Right, so right, so what am I supposed to do there? Like that's why I say take a look. I take a look at 40% of my lineups with Chase Edmonds with 0.3, him getting injured on the first play, going like do I ever play James Conner there? I mean, what do I do? I mean, it happens, right?
And then Conner goes for 40.
Right, but
it's even just needling.
Yeah, but I don't care at that point. Like I'm dead anyway. I know. So, but like from a process perspective, like Edmonds is like 8% owned, right? Yeah. And I'm paying down at running. I'm paying down a lot of times at running, at least one of the running back spots.
Yep.
And I'm playing more like Stephon Diggs. I'm playing more same. Buffalo. I'm playing more. Not paying down a quarterback. Right, I'm playing for Darren Waller at tight end, off of Albert O, and going the other direction, like playing a lot of Booker Waller lineups, playing Carr Renfro Waller Booker type of lineups. And I look through all, when the ownership is all spread out. Really, it's a matter of who's going to be. I want to play the guys that are going to be lesser owned. Even though the lesser ownership, it may only be a 5 to 7% difference.
Yeah.
Right. So I take a look at ownership. I have in the millie, for instance. Like if we just judge it by that, which should be more spread out than in obviously smaller field contests. If I take a look at like the wide receiver position for the millie, in that. The mid-range. So we have Tyreek Hill at 19%. We have Stephon Diggs at 16%. So these are higher-end wide receivers, right? We have Keenan Allen at 6%. Justin Jefferson at 7%. And this is in the millie because they were a little bit more owned in the smaller field stuff, higher stake stuff. But in that mid-range, Amari Cooper, 16. Renfro, 20. T. Higgins, 12. Landry, 14. Rondell Moore, 8. Kadarius Toney 11, Brandon Cooks 21, which caught me by surprise. Jalen Waddle 14, Jamar Chase, which was a high-end receiver, at 16 in the millie, and I knew because of recency bias that was going to happen. He was going to be lower owned in the like the power suite type of stuff.
Yep.
Jerry Jeudy 9. Emmanuel Sanders 12, Cortland Sutton 4. So I take a look at all of that and I go like Cole Beasley 6. Right? I'm like, why?
Yep.
Like, I should be playing combinations of these guys, and I don't need to care about like leverage. There's just so many in this range that like just let me play 3 of them. And which one is going to be the one which are the ones that are going to be the most the over-owned in comparison? And I thought it was Marquise Brown and Tyreek Hill. Out of the in GPP only because Lamar was going to be so popular that someone wants to. If people are going to play Albert O, a cheap tight end, and not Mark Andrews, so who are they going to pair Lamar with? They're going to pair him with Marquise Brown. Now, I didn't think he'd get up to these levels.
Yeah.
But in that type of situation, it's like I'm not looking for leverage plays. I'm just looking for construction leverage. So it's like I'm not building, like I'm still playing most of these types of guys. Just not in I have Chase Edmonds at 8% in this lineup. And I have Jerry Jeudy in this lineup. And when I have Ezekiel Elliott in the lineup, I have Broncos. I don't have Albert O. I have Jerry Jeudy instead. And I have Booker, and then I have Waller in the tight end spot. So it's like, and then I just plug in the best. Then you just plug in the best plays at that, right? At that point, because there's no leverage to be like they're all similarly owned. You go down to like the guys that are like 2% owned, yeah, because they're bad plays because they project poorly. Right?
Yeah, there's 100 guys that project well. The guy that's 2% is probably a shitty play because there's so many other guys that project well.
Right. And then I just take a look at this, and we had a unique week in the NFL where like no one did well. Like just like it was just like 90% landmines. And as long as you avoided landmines and had James Conner, you could have or Nick Chubb. Like you probably didn't need James Conner in some of the really small field stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if you didn't get to the exact right pieces, like if you did not have Nick Chubb in your running back spot, you could not win. A lot of times in higher scoring slates, you would say, well, Nick Chubb has 33, but my 2 running backs combined for 60 as it is, so like screw it. It didn't have to be Nick Chubb. But when the Bills and the Cowboys can't get there, like then what am I supposed? What are you supposed to do? So like from a strategic perspective, I don't see how I do anything there. I don't see how anyone. The weird thing is, it's not just me. I don't see how anyone does anything differently.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you and I think I was going to say exactly what you said. It's important. All of that context that you kind of just outlined is important when, like, why we have these weekly conversations is because, when you have the discussions around, like, again, comparing like the Pittman thing to this Hollywood and Lamar thing. It's like on that slate, we had like 1,000,000% owned Dan Arnold to leverage. I guess you could say you had Alberto to leverage.
But he wasn't really that. But he wasn't that chalky.
I could not believe his ownership either. I was going in, I'm like, I'm eating some of this. Same thing as a much different kind of version of Amari. I was like, okay, I think the way I constructed these teams, it's totally fine to play Amari here, or it's totally fine to play Alberto. And then I went in, Alberto's like 30% in the 4K. I was like, I figured this is like the 70% owned spot or something.
Right,
like
in
that.
in the 100K spot, he was 25% owned,
which is like crazy. I really didn't expect that either. So yeah, again, like we flipped over the cards and I felt totally fine. And it's because there, like you said, there wasn't DeAndre Swift, right? Where Jamal Williams is out. The next thing you know, DeAndre Swift in smaller fields is 50, 60, 70% owned in some of these contests. And it's like, okay, you fade DeAndre Swift and you fade whatever, Dan Arnold. It's like, it doesn't really matter. Just play, just like you said, I did this, I did that. I faded, I played the Waller Booker thing, and then I played Teddy, Jeudy, and it's like, and then it's like, okay, play Zeke and play, whoever, and it's fine. And so I thought that this was, like you said, this slate that I expected coming in it to be kind of kind of flat, and I was a little worried about a couple of guys that I was, considering playing, and then it ended up being, like you said, why I wouldn't change anything, why a lot of people wouldn't change anything. It ended up being way even more beneficial to the decisions that I made. I thought I was eating more Amari chalk than I was. I thought I was eating more Albert O chalk than I was. I thought, like you said, I also thought Hollywood, given the context of the slate, was going to be overowned. I thought Lamar was going to be overowned, and then obviously that stack, which in turn made, again, I talked about on Sunday morning. I'm like, if you're going to play that, like, I would like to play Justin Jefferson, because I'm not sure that Justin Jefferson can get steamed, and he kind of got
No, he was
steamed
18% owned in the game changer.
What? That's crazy. Like, I liked him, right? Obviously, I talked about it. Who doesn't like Justin Jefferson? He makes a natural high upside bring back, but like 18%.
Yeah, but
like,
the only reason he's
like,
18% is because Marquise Brown is 33%. I mean, like, it all comes together.
exactly.
That's why you have to figure this ownership goes hand in hand with one another. Like, I knew that Marquise Brown was going to be chalky, not to this extent, but I also knew that Justin Jefferson, we have projections around the industry putting Justin Jefferson at like 5% ownership, and I go, this is wrong. Like, I know this because, like, Marquise Brown, I have projected for 18. I have Lamar at 16, and I think those are under, right? So I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if Lamar comes in at close to 20 and Marquise Brown comes closer to 22. And
Yeah,
obviously,
the only way they could go was up. They couldn't. They were not.
they weren't going to go
lower than
down.
that. Only
But
way
you're bringing Vikings with them. Like, like all these Vikings are going with them. So, like, what other way in that game? Like, you're playing like it was one of those games where obviously it's not the highest total game. I mean, like, we had the Cowboys, we had the Bills, we had other spots to target, and
a bunch. Yeah.
right, but the Baltimore Minnesota game was the easiest game to put the pieces together, right? Because it's like, well, who do I play if I don't want to pay up a tight end? Lamar, Brown, Jefferson. Like, you're done. Maybe you play Dalvin Cook instead of Justin Jefferson, and you're done. Like, but in the Cowboys game, you could have played CeeDee Lamb, you could have played Dalton Schultz. There are 3 Broncos receivers, none of them being Tim Patrick that I had. Of course, I see Tim Patrick going off. Go, he's the one guy I don't have. And then same for the Bills game. Like, you go, like, well, there are multiple combinations of Diggs, Beasley, and Sanders. You can always throw in Tommy Sweeney as a punt play in the tight end if everyone's playing Albert O. So there's a lot more combinations there. Then what do you do on a bring back for the Jaguars? Probably no one, right? I played some Dan Arnold as a bring back. In those lineups, but like, it was just so much clearer of like Lamar, Brown, Jefferson. And on any other slate, other games would have put up as many points also, and it would have been a hodgepodge of stuff. It just so happened that there were more games that failed than succeeded. So I don't even consider, if you took a look at that Baltimore-Minnesota game, like, Justin Jefferson only had 17 points. I mean, Marquise Brown got there in overtime and 23 points. And on other weeks, Marquise Brown would have 23 points and still only be the 8th highest scoring wide receiver on the slate.
Yeah, we wouldn't care. We would have been like, oh, he sucked out and people got there, but you wouldn't care because that's not a GPP winning score, not at 6K plus.
Right, or no, it could be in a GPP winning lineup, but it wouldn't be. It would be like, well, you have Marquise Brown and I have Cortland Sutton with 28 points, or I have Stephon Diggs with 30 points, or Tyreek Hill has 36, and I just needed a cheap receiver or something. It's just like no, those were the guys that weren't the landmines, and of course, the guys that weren't the landmines were the ones that were over, like the ones that were objectively overowned. Like, I just don't win on these weeks. Like, it just did. Like, there's no other way to go. Like, this winning lineup in the game changer has AJ Dillon in the running back spot. I mean, like you took a look at the Millie lineup, and it's like Zach Moss, and like it's like you don't. It's James Conner, obviously, Nick Chubb, and then you just needed Lamar Jackson or Justin Herbert because they put up way more points at the quarterback position than anyone else because all the games sucked. And it's just like I'm just never gonna get to I'm just never gonna get there, right? And then a lot of people, you have to look for some of these winning lineups. Is that like, so someone commented about like, oh, The winning lineup was like Herbert and no run. Like Devonta Smith went off, but there wasn't a run back. But if you take a look at the dude's exposures, he had a ton of Devonta Smith. It just didn't happen to be in that lineup. So
That's
like
funny.
I look from a strategy perspective. That's why I like studying the 150 max type players, because you start seeing roster construction types, and it's like, oh, well, this guy won with Connor. What did he see in Connor? He didn't see anything in Connor. He actually had 38% Chase Edmonds, right? The dude had 40% of, no, he was targeting the Cardinals running back situation. And it's quite possible he had 50% Chase Edmonds and then decided to swap at his good lineups to say, well, I'm just going to hedge some of these
Yep.
Chase Edmonds with James Conner because they're about the same price and go into the late game. So it's like that. It's the main reason why I don't like studying like the winning lineup. Like
Yeah.
the winning lineup, who the hell knows? You don't have the information that you have in front of you. And then if the winning lineup is like a max entry type player, like no, I want to see his exposures because there's tons. You know how many times you do well like in multi entry, not you because you're playing 1 to 3 lineups. That you're under like you're like in 150.
Oh yeah.
Like maybe I have 5 Lamar Jackson teams with Marquise Brown and Justin Jefferson and some contrarian plays, which is still viable, right? And that's the one that wins. And people are like, well, why were you on such chalky? Like, no, look at my spot. I barely had him. I barely had anyone, right? I like this lineup consists of Jackson, Chubb, Jefferson, Marquise Brown. It's like I'm not playing these, and the Chiefs defense at 36% don't like. I'm just like I just don't get there. I'm sorry. I wasn't. The only reason I lose like all my entries is because both the games that could have been the other games failed. Like not either
Miserably
of them.
and miserably, absolutely miserably failed. I was telling people it felt exactly like the Cowboys game specifically felt exactly like Chiefs Titans. Like the you're just waiting the whole game. You're like, holy shit, this is it, right? Like you're worried about the Broncos putting up a big score when you're going into the game. You're like the same thing. I wasn't really like I don't know about worried, right? But that's the thing. Like, how does this fail? Okay, the Cowboys win 27-13 or something like that, right? Like the Broncos score like 30 points. Like just they cannot be stopped, and you're just like, all right, well, this is the 50 passing attempt Dak game, and the Cowboys are just going to go nuts in the second half. You just keep waiting, and they go 3 and out. And then they block a punt, and then they the guy touches it, and I didn't. That rule makes no sense to me. But then the Broncos get the ball back, and then they just keep running, and it was just like you just keep waiting for that to happen.
I'm watching Red Zone going. It felt like the Cowboys never had the ball.
They didn't. It was missing. It was because every time they got it, they would go 3 and out, and then the Broncos would have a 10-play drive and go score a touchdown. And then, of course, it was kind of funny. And to your very original point, like it was over. I didn't care. I didn't really care about the Sunday night game. I actually played NBA and made a decent NBA team and watched some NBA on Sunday night. And moved on, and I didn't really, like you said, I didn't really care. Felt like I played well, lost in tournaments. That's just kind of, it is what it is. It's basically the expectation going in. But like, now I don't even remember what I was gonna say. But like, you have these games where like that was basically everything I could have dreamed of it playing out, right? Like,
right, you were more concerned, like in that game. Truthfully, in that game. Playing that stack that way, especially, I mean, you're playing the Bridgewater side, which I am also. I mean, I'm playing some lineups like that, but I'm playing more of the Dak side. The concern in the game is not what to me wasn't the Cowboys; it was the Broncos. It's like, am I going to get enough points out of guys like Judy, Sutton? Albert I don't care about because he's chalky and he's in the tight end spot. So if he gives me 9 points, right? It just are the Broncos going to do enough that I end up with lineups that it's like Dak. I have Dak with Cooper and Schultz, and it's like Dak has 32, Cooper has 26, Schultz has 18, and Jerry Jeudy sitting there with 4.9 points in the snowflake. And I'm like these Broncos are the ones that killed me, and it turns out it's the opposite. It turns out the Bridgewater stacks were the best stacks that I had.
Right, and so it's like again, you the slate is over, and like it's a random variable. The results are typically just variance. They certainly were. I mean, the Bills scoring 6 points on the Jaguars is pretty wild. And again, the Chiefs being absolutely horrific on offense. Those things, it just is what it is. But like, again, to the point of like, would you have changed anything? It's like if I told you, right, the Broncos race out to a 20-0 lead on the Cowboys, and you have that game stacked up, right? Or you tell me that the Jaguars are competing with the Bills the whole game, right? Like the Jaguars have a chance to win it at the end of the game. Like, are you happy with your Bills?
And then you tell me
Fuck
Lamar
yeah.
and Marquise Brown's ownership.
Yeah.
And you go like, oh,
You're
so which one are you gonna do? Are you gonna play the chalk of? I mean, like the overwhelmingly chalk stack, and then try to get different elsewhere on a slate where it's hard to get different elsewhere because everyone's owned the same. Like,
Yeah.
to me, the easiest thing was do is just ignore the Baltimore game and just I'm running lineups afterwards. So I would go into like the historic projections and lineup HQ using the actual ownership versus the whatever. And I'm building lineups going like, if I was building the same way I would normally build, which is a profitable way long term, I've been doing this for God knows how long. And it's like, no, if I put in the actual ownerships here, there's Marquise Brown doesn't even sniff a line. I mean, just like the easiest way to eliminate ownership and still have maintained projection was to not play Lamar Jackson and Marquise Brown. I'm looking at lineups going like, this lineup has 50 percentage points more ownership and is lower projected. And I could find 100 lineups that are higher projected than this lineup. If I put in the actual ownership, I would have never. I just never get there, and I get even more Chase Edmonds, right? So I get even more.
Yep.
So actually, if I had the actual, even though I only cashed 1 out of 24, my point scoring would have been even worse. I mean, because I would have had even more Chase Edmonds. I would have had even more Amari Cooper. I would have had a little bit less Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah.
I would have had much less Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
And I would have had much more Booker and I would have more Gaskin. Gaskin's
his ownership
went
was
down.
surprising too.
Right,
Yeah,
his went down.
Yeah.
So I just look at that and go like, my process has been profitable, right? So what am I gonna do? I mean, it's one of those weeks that I'm not sitting here understanding why I lost. I'm like, I just lose these weeks. I mean, I don't playing 24 lineups now. Could I have played out of my 24 lineups 4 Lamar Jackson lineups and gotten different elsewhere? I could have. I mean, from a diversification perspective, absolutely. But I'm not, when I'm playing small amount of lineups, I don't care about I'm not playing for diversification. I'm not playing 150 lineups. So diversification is not a priority. I'm putting in $2,500 worth of lineups, and if I get 0 back, that's just the way it is. So Herbert was right on the end. I could have made Herbert I was going to make Herbert lineups before I made Lamar Jackson lineups.
I just played Keenan. I thought about the same thing, but then I opted just to play Keenan Allen as kind of my, not Herbert exposure per se, but you know what I mean?
Right.
I saw exactly the same thing, and it was like, I can just play Keenan instead and don't have to worry about stacking up the game.
I think I played one Allen Goddard type of lineup. But of course, I have Chase Edmonds in that lineup, and I have Josh Allen plus Beasley plus Sanders. I mean, the one guy's good, but that doesn't do anything. I mean, so I could look at that. So I just review what would I have done different? Had I known, my lineups could have only gotten worse, right? Could have only scored worse.
Yeah.
They weren't worse. They just only would have scored worse. So what? To me, those types of slates are, there's nothing to learn. There's nothing from it. What is there? What I don't understand what's there to learn out of those situations, other than lineups that had lower projections and higher ownership got there, and there were plus EV lineups that you can make like that. It's just that they were lower EV than the lineups that I made, and I didn't make them. That's it.
Right. And it's definitely, again, like you said, a little bit different for me playing 1 to 3 teams versus even you playing your like
Yeah,
the
you playing
24
all three
number.
Teddy Bridgewater lineup seems like that seems even odd to me because I know you don't mind going all in,
Hmm.
but it's like why not do whatever lineup you were doing and just play Dak and another. I mean, you're still playing the same game to play all three. I mean, I'm not questioning. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a risk tolerance thing,
Right.
right? It seems weird to me that it's not like Bridgewater was owned. So it's like if you Dak Prescott wasn't owned, of course he was more expensive. So why not at least do like a Dak version of the lineup that you have of Teddy
Yeah.
Bridgewater? Obviously, you have to pay down at one spot in order to go up to Dak Prescott. So is there a reason behind that, or you're just like I think this stack this way is the long term. If this played out 10,000 times, I'd make the most amount of money doing it these three ways, and diversification be damned.
Yeah, it was two things. I do definitely have no issues really like taking a stand and going all in on something, right? Whether it's a stack or a secondary correlation or whatever. I'm totally open, and a lot of times I like to do that if that's the thing I've determined to be kind of my. We talk about right, like the cleanest path to first or whatever. If that's the one thing I think that stands out to me as that, and it was just that game. So to your exact point, I did look at like Dak doubles and the Schultz Amari thing, or including CD or whatever, and I just it went from I was not opposed to doing that at all by any means. I couldn't. Then it became a roster construction thing, using the savings the savings down to Teddy, and just using one of the Cowboys since the Broncos obviously having Alberto available to me, having Jerry Jeudy being a little bit cheaper than the Cowboys wide receivers, having the like cheaper options available to me, and that savings allowed me to get the secondary stuff that I wanted. Like I said, the other guy I was really high on was Booker Giants defense, and so I was trying to prioritize as much of that as I could too. I'm trying to even think of what my side, yeah, like Keenan out. So I was living a little bit more like Keenan Allen range. I played stuff on Diggs, like you said, so I was prioritizing kind of that tier. I actually played Aaron Jones at running back on a team. Which I actually would do something with the Packers again. Same thing, especially with the Chiefs being 1,000,000% owned. I
Well,
thought that the Packers were
Aaron
super
Jones came
interesting.
in overowned also.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing that I was annoyed about, which is weird to me that the Chiefs can be that crazy. But I guess people are, and maybe this is something too, that people are definitely like, we don't have okay, this is the mega chalk defense, and so basically the opposite side of that game is like not going to. It might be owned, but there's no way that it gets like any sort of steam. But Aaron Jones did get a little bit.
Well, I think
So
I
maybe
think it
that.
was more due to the fact because people think like I think they think I don't want to call it wrongly because it's not wrong. It's just I think it's less optimal that people and they do this in all sports. Uh, Austin Eckler is going to be chalky. Who do I play instead of him at the same price range? And
Right.
they don't realize that having a very similar projected lineup that is a 4v4 is much more valuable than a similarly projected lineup that's a 1v1 because you're just not
Yeah.
sharing as many players. You could find a way to do this kind of flipping the construction type of thing. So what I think is that people built lineups and said I'm playing Tyreek Hill and instead of playing Eckler Elliott, I'm going to play Aaron Jones instead because it's the
Yeah.
same price running. It's a running back spot. They don't have a spot for Devontae Adams as the other side of the game because like they're only paying up for once at wide receiver, but they're already paying up at running back to either Kamara, Eckler, Elliott. So it's like, well, if I'm playing Tyreek Hill, who am I playing on the other side of the game? Same lineup, just instead of Eckler,
Jones. Yep.
put in that. To me, that's the only way I see it. I don't see Aaron Jones naked, just in the blue, nothing like that. So,
Yeah.
like, I don't think the defense had anything to do with it. It's more of the fact that Eckler and Elliott were chalky and like, well, they're going to be chalky. I'm going to play similar price guy and still have the same lineup and be a 1v1 to like 10% of the entire field, which
Yeah.
you'd rather be a 4v4 to like 1% of the field with a
Right.
similarly projected and owned lineup. So I just wanted to point that out. But I was still surprised that. But I'm putting in the rationale on why because I had Aaron Jones at like projected at like 7% ownership.
Right.
Like, and he comes in in the power sweep at 17. Comes into the SPY at 18, and I go, really? He's less more owned than Gaskin, more owned than some of the cheaper like. And then I look at this and I go, who are the most owned wide running backs? Oh, they're all it's Eckler, Elliott, Chubb,
Yeah.
Cook, Jones, Kamara, and it's like, what was my strategy? To pay down at running. I mean, so I look at this and I go, like, had I known all this information, all I do is make similar lineups than what I did, and probably score lower. So like, and I take a look around the industry. I take a look at a lot of sharp players' lineups, and I'm like, oh, their lineups look a lot like my lineup. And I like so just it's just one of those weeks. If you don't have Chubb and Connor and something, I mean, just if you don't have those guys. And they're owned enough, even at like 2 to 5% owned. Like, if you don't have Donovan Peoples-Jones in your lineup, I mean, but it's hard. But it's hard for me, Eric, to reconcile that because my natural inclination is to find what I could learn from this. Right? Like the week before with Pittman, I was like, can someone tell me why this happened? Because I knew Pittman was in that range. But did I miss something? So I'm going through stuff going, did I miss something? And I go through this week and I go, I didn't miss anything. Like there's nothing that I missed. So I'm trying to understand, like, how could I've recreated take the actual ownerships of whatever came in and the projections from anywhere I can possibly find, and how do I and what lineups do I come up with if I have 24 lineups? And it's all the same. It's the same line. Like, even if like, okay, I'm going to diversify and play Justin Herbert. Let's say I play Justin Herbert plus Keenan Allen plus Dallas Goedert, and then I plug in my lineups, and I have Chase Edmonds, and I have. I mean, like it ends up being like I have Chase Edmonds, Stephon Diggs. I have Elliott in that lineup because I don't have Eckler in that lineup. And it's like, I look at this lineup, I go, well, this lineup scores 101 points. So, like, what is it? Like, what did it matter? Right. Yeah, yes, I got Herbert and Allen right, but the rest of my lineup are snowflakes. And I go, because this lineup would never get Marquise Brown in his ownership. It would never get Nick Chubb in his ownership. And I go, like what do I do? That's maybe this is why it's going to be a short episode this week. What the hell can I learn from this? I mean, I don't know.
I do think that's like, the lesson that there is no lesson is like actually kind of something I feel that's fairly important. And it's funny that you bring it up because we were talking about this yesterday in the Spike Week Discord, because like, so for best ball for NFL, we're starting to get, deeper into the season, right? People are talking about like, okay, what can we learn? How do I know if my teams are good? Like, how do I know if I drafted well? And like, sure, there are things that you can learn and maybe look back on and see if you've made mistakes. But we're talking about here, like from once the cards were flipped over before the results came in, would you change anything or whatever? And sometimes, right, they're just like this is DFS. It's been around for a long time, and sometimes you just have to be like, yep, there isn't like I don't know. There's nothing to learn, right? Like it was like the Mike Williams thing. People are like, oh shit, a month ago, what a mistake not drafting Mike Williams in the 7th round of my fantasy draft.
Well, how about DJ Moore? Right? The first 4 weeks of the season, like Sam Darnold's good, and DJ Moore you might as well just say he's Devontae Adams now. And now it's like he's 6,400 and no one takes him. Except for me, I play him in 3 lineups and he does nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if it's an injury, but like Derrick Henry, everybody has claimed victory in week 7 of the season. They're like, oh my God, imagine those fish fading Derrick Henry, and it's like the DFS thing. You're fading Derrick Henry. Oh, he's built different, right? Remember, Derrick Henry is just different. He doesn't get hurt. He breaks 70-yard touchdown runs every single week, and then voila, guess what? You don't want Derrick Henry anymore, right? And like, people want to have a lesson learned from everything, and that's inherently that's pretty much a good thing. But being able to so I think it's much easier for like NBA, right? It's like because slate's over at midnight my time, like 1 a.m. your time, and the next morning you wake up and like there's another there's another slate, and that afternoon you're making teams again for a brand new slate, and it's like you're there's only so much time to even like really think super deeply about like what lessons can be learned. But football is like, well, we got a whole week to learn these new things, and then like I said, from this like best ball and season long perspective, these people are freaking out like every single touchdown of the entire season. It's like, oh my god, I didn't draft so and so, what a mistake that was. And people just want to have like something to learn, or have like conviction about what was the right thing and what was the wrong thing. And like it's so often so results based that people want to like learn something. And it's like sometimes exactly like what you just said is like, that slate happened, it came and it went, and I wouldn't change anything that I did, even though I lost, and we just move on. You move on to the next
dog
week,
moves on.
and the dogs are done with that slate. I was fucking done with that slate. Those games, it could not have been a worse possible slate. At least if the games were entertaining or something.
The games were horrible.
Like,
the games were awful.
God. That was the worst. That was the worst slate of games I've ever like. I like, it was like the afternoon games. Normally it'd be like, I'll still watch even when I'm just dust, just because it's like that's what I do on football Sundays. And like I was like channel surfing, and I'm like Patrick Mahomes has thrown 25 times and has 80 passing yards. Josh Allen scored 6 fucking points against the
Josh Allen is getting picked off and sacked by the other Josh Allen in the middle of the. That was more entertaining than anything else. Scott Hansen going nuts over. That's like, well, if Josh, it's already the fourth quarter. Let him have a fumble recovery also at this point. Like, who cares? Who cares? He's that my Josh Allen teams are dead. They ain't getting there, right? So like, you're right. It's like it was an awful slate just even to watch all around. But I mean,
Yep.
yeah. But the difference between like process and results, like. For instance, like Adam Ship My Money, like tweeted out like at like pretty much at 1:00 or whatever. Like
the Hollywood thing.
Yeah, about like why the fuck is Marquise Brown this? Why is he 36% like what like anyone I talk to is like what made him that much and the problem is like he got a lot of responses back of like, well, he was a good play like that, but that's not the point that's being made. It's like. Yeah. What makes him twice as good of a play as all these other guys? I mean, like that. It's not a matter of if he's a slightly better play, he should be slightly more owned. If he's a much better play, he should be much more. I mean, it's that dichotomy of the ownership. It's not like, well, what did people see in Marquise Brown? We're not asking that question. Like, there's not. If you would have said, regardless of ownership, who's the best quarterback projected play on the slate? Lamar Jackson. Said, yep. If you play Lamar Jackson, who's the best projected player to play him with? Marquise Brown. Okay, that's correct. But we're not playing in a vacuum. We're playing an 11-game slate. There's 21 other teams. So, like, if Lamar Jackson is 95% owned and Marquise Brown is 80% owned, like, do they justify that ownership? Would you be more profitable not playing them or playing them? And the answer is not playing them. So, like, it's not a matter of, like, is that a good play? Because I know we'll get YouTube comments. It's like, well, Marquise Brown was a good. Same thing with Michael Pittman. Same goddamn thing. This is why he was a good play. You don't have to tell me why he's a good play. I know why he's a good play. I don't understand why he's twice as good of a play as all these other guys in the same range. That's what made him. So my conjecture is that because Lamar was high owned, and people playing a cheap tight end and not Mark Andrews. They're plugging in Marquise Brown to go with Lamar Jackson, which makes sense. Which makes, if that's the case, that's the case. But with the cards flipped over, I go like, you can't objectively, Eric, you can't objectively tell me that as a one-off, Marquise Brown at 36% owned is like positive expected value, just in a vacuum, right? So whether or not he gets there doesn't matter. Like that's not what I'm trying to learn.
Yeah.
Right. Just like when you say in the best ball stuff. If you think learning, oh, what could I have done better, is to draft the 9 highest point guys. If I would have just drafted this guy in round 1 or that guy in round 2 and this guy in round 3, it's like, dude, no one could do that. It's the same thing when we play MLB DFS. Especially, I'm using MLB as the perfect example of like, you don't learn by saying, well, if I would have picked out the 8 guys that hit a home run today, I would have won. So I need to learn how to pick those 8 guys. Like, no, there's no way
Yep.
to pick. No, it's better to say I'm going to pick 5 guys from one team and 3 guys from another team and hope those are the 2 highest scoring teams and having the right pitchers in there. And then is this 5-man stack 2 owned or over owned? And you think of those types of terms. But if you're going if I just would have played Chris Taylor at second base, and if I just would have played Paul DeJong at shortstop, even though he's batting 8th against Max Scherzer, and he happened to hit 2 home runs, like you can't learn. There's literally nothing to learn there because it's 8 independent events that have so much variance in it that yes, if you could pick out the the guys that hit 2 home runs in one game on a 14-game slate, and there's 8 of them, and you got all 8, like, yes, that would be the optimal lineup. But our goal is not to hit the optimal lineup. Our goal is to just have the best lineup in comparison to our opponents. So going through this slate and going like, I'm going to go to Lineup HQ and look at the best possible lineup and see like 4 sub 1% owned players in it and go, how do I get there? Like that's not the way. That's not learning. Learning is, had I known all this information, what lineups would I've made? And if the lineups if the lineups would have been better, then you have to learn of like how did I not execute my strategy correctly, right? Because had I known was what I knew, and it still didn't come out correctly. And then had I known something different, that's all I said. Like with these ownerships in NFL, had I known, the results of my lineups would have actually been worse. So like I learned, right? I learned something, but it wouldn't have resulted in any better results. It actually would have resulted in better lineups that just their results would have been worse. So I mean, I think people that listen to the show like understand that concept, but like I don't want to get YouTube comments of like, well, this is why Marquise Brown was a good play. Like you don't have to tell me objectively from a football perspective why he's a good play and why if you have Lamar Jackson in your lineup, that's who you put in. I mean, you don't have to tell me that. Just that ownership, I don't believe those lineups had as high of an expected value as thousands of other lineups you could have made.
Yeah, and so there are two quick things to add because I know we have to wrap up fairly quickly, and it is I thought it was fascinating that the like you talked about with the ownership with Lamar and Hollywood, but then we also touched on the Albert O thing. I was worried about the Albert O thing getting away from us this week, and his own people were willing to move away from Albert O this particular. I mean, he was still very popular, right? I'm not saying he wasn't popular, but people were willing to move away from this. Like I projected Albert O better than Dan Arnold a couple of weeks ago. And obviously I had, like correlations and stuff involved in some of my lineups too, that made that more beneficial. But like, I thought it was interesting that people were willing to move away from Albert O a little bit more than I expected, but not from Lamar because of how, like I think again, you outlined it really well. It was just like such a clean stack. Like you're playing Lamar and you're spending down at tight end, whether you're playing Albert O or not, people want to spend down at tight end, right? And so you pay down at tight end because I don't want to pay $5,500 for Mark Andrews. So like, well, who am I going to? Well, there's Marquise Brown, and it's like Marquise Brown is sexy to click on in tournaments, right? He's also getting all this volume and blah 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 blah. So there's all these, I guess narrative-based reasons that structure was just so easy. It was such an easy click, and then all these other stacks, like you mentioned, it wasn't easy. Like even like the Herbert thing, it's like Keenan or Mike Williams, right? Or do I play Jared Cook or like Jalen Hurts? Am I playing Goddard or am I playing Devonta Smith? And then, right, obviously you have, who the hell knows what's going on with the Packers and the Chiefs, and then the Bills and the Cowboys, and right. So all the other spots were much trickier to kind of figure it out. And so the thing that I will say, I guess, as we've talked this through, that I would say that I kind of like learn is exactly that. We know that like wide receiver ownership will follow, and the opposite is also true sometimes, right? The quarterback ownership might follow, right? Which kind of happened with Wentz a little bit. Wentz wasn't necessarily like a total standout punt quarterback that 1 week, but that game was popular. Pittman was the chalkiest wide receiver, so I was like, okay, I'll just use Wentz as my cheap quarterback. Now this week, Lamar is the standout play. That stack makes perfect sense. So Hollywood's ownership gets steamed through the absolute roof because of kind of this the correlated ownerships, and then you get Jefferson also on the other side. His ownership gets steamed, and so it's something that we've talked about plenty. I inherently know. I talked about it on Sunday morning with Gretch. I'm like, I'm really worried about that ownership getting steamed out of control because of that correlated ownership type stuff. And it's like, I know that, but I want that. That's something especially as, the season wraps up, it's a lot of, there's sharper players, you mentioned it mostly in regards to cash games, but I think it'll be true just across the entire industry that, the really bad players in the bankroll dries up, or they just keep losing and they don't want to keep playing. And so people are correlating, people are stacking, people are making the same sneaky GPP plays every single week. And I just want to make sure that I keep that in mind. Like, it's something that, like, I knew and I acted on it. We both did. We both full faded that stack in that game. But to the extent that it happened was still pretty
right. It was I think we're talking more about the extent, not that it, like, I expected that to be the chalk. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Oh my God, why is Lamar to Marquise? If Lamar was in the SPY, for instance, if Lamar was 20% owned and Marquise Brown was 22% owned, I'd be like, okay, and they're the highest owned and I go, that's a little bit higher than I thought, but it's fine. But when Lamar Jackson is 29% owned and Marquise Brown is 36% owned, which means people play Marquise Brown as one-offs also, right?
Yeah, which is even that's like maybe even wilder. Like, and because not every Lamar, how many of those are Marquise Brown one-offs? Because not every Lamar team has Hollywood. I mean, a lot of them obviously, but like that's a lot of Marquise Brown one-offs.
Well, I think it's due to the same thing that I said before about Aaron Jones. People look at their lineup, they build their lineup without Lamar. They go, I'm going to play whatever quarterback and, stack that they have. And they go, okay, I need a 5K level receiver. Do I play Amari Cooper? Do I play Brandon Cooks? No, they're both going to be too chalky. Let me just play Marquise Brown and they think they're playing Marquise Brown because he's going to be less owned because he's not in double up lineups, right? And then it turns out Marquise Brown is but you have to think of these I mean, we've been talking, Eric, about the next level thinking since we've started this podcast.
Yep.
Right? And I think this is the type of stuff. Now, it's not this is the next step of the DFS evolution of everyone could see what we could see. So they're reacting in a way of like, well, if Marquise Brown is only going to be 14% owned and Higgins and Cooper are going to be 20% owned, why don't I play Marquise Brown? And then it turns out Marquise Brown ends up being the chalk, but you're seeing that more and more. It's not just infecting. I'm not use the word infecting. It's not infecting the small, like the game changer. Like it's doing the power sweep. It's doing the SPY. It's doing, it's branching down that.
Yeah. Which to your, that didn't happen. Like when you said, we've talked about this for a while. A lot of the times was a conversation where you were like, I'm maxing the slant or whatever, and it's not happening as much here, or I'm maxing whatever, and we would be like, look at the ownership of this guy, look at the ownership of Hollywood in the game changer, and look at the ownership of Hollywood in this. You're like, we would say this all the time, right? He's a good, like, this is a plus EV play in this contest, but it is not in this other contest. We would have that conversation a lot, and now, like you said, it's not the same. But it's getting a lot closer. Like, I mean, 30 whatever percent in the milli is that's crazy. That's crazy. So it is kind of across a lot more contests. So that's the next level of this next level thing is evolving too.
Well, but I think that the best thing to learn conceptually from that is that, like, and I've talked about it before about like fading games because of like you put correlated ownership. Is that a better way to put it? Is that the more the field is willing to either correlate or find salary and positional leverage, the more that those second and third plays in those ranges end up getting more owned. Right?
100%.
Right. So, like, if everyone's going to play Lamar, they're going to start, like, thinking of those terms. So you may mathematically, to wrap things up, most around the industry have projections based around a rational market, but we don't live in a rational market. So that's what that's like. Some people have asked me, it's like, well, you can get ownership, you subscribe everywhere, you get ownership projections everywhere. So why don't you just aggregate those ownerships and that's what you use? Instead of what I do is I manually change them. I do aggregate, but then I go in and go, nope, this guy's going to be 5% higher. Nope, this guy's going to be lower. People are going to pay up here and they're not going to pay down there. And I spend the time to do that before I build lineups. And they go, well, why do you do that? Like, and I have no scientific process. Like, there's no way for me to back test what I'm doing, right? It's completely based on feel. But player projections I don't use based on feel because I don't know the NFL well. Like, I'm never going to know the NFL well enough than a model can. But I know how models do ownership, and human beings are way less predictable, and to me they're way more irrational than what. I mean, we see this in economics, right? Because there's all these economic studies that are like, well, if we raise prices here and do this and then everything, because then we're all happy. Everyone knows there's no hunger in the world, right? It's world peace. And it's like, people don't act that way. Like, that's a rational market. Like, ownership is an irrational market. So, like, all the recency, but like, I look and I go, like, Boston Scott is 2% owned. Should I play him? It's like, no, because he's going to be 6% owned. They go, but how is he going to be 6% owned at this projection? It's like, because they had a good week last week. Like that's all it needs to take, right? I just look at this stuff and I go, Marquise Brown is being projected for 18. I'm going to bump him up to 22. Like, because I know he's going to be paired more often. Is Hunter Renfrow sexy? Well, with the Ruggs thing happening, I think his ownership gets a little bit inflated. I originally had him at 16 and I bumped him up to 20. Brandon Cooks threw me for a loop because a lot of people have not been wanting to play him. So I saw Brandon Cooks' ownership come in projected at like 16. I'm like, I think he's going to be more like 12 because people don't want to play. Then it turns out they do want to play. But like, that's why simply, like, I have no problem changing the ownership. And if you're good at that, like, to me that's my little secret sauce edge. And that's one of the main reasons why me trying to learn is more about, let me compare my ownership to actual and go, would I have done anything differently? And it's like, no, dude, like Cortland Sutton was 4% owned and I thought he was 6% owned and I had him in half my lineups. So it's like, there's nothing I do. I thought maybe I had a little bit too much Landry. I had Landry in my ownership at like 18% and he came in at like 14. So it's like, what would have happened? I had more land. I mean, like, these lineups would have ended up being less points. So it's like this. So to me, but thinking in those terms, that's what we're talking about. That's what that level. It's not good players leveling each other in a 40-person field tournament type of thing, like we were talking about before. It's almost people playing the game better from a construction standpoint, and how does that affect ownership?
Right, we didn't always have people, right, constructing properly correlated teams and thinking through not just correlation but leverage and ownership and all that kind of stuff and projection, blah blah blah, upside ceilings. We didn't always have people thinking through pulling all those levers in their teams. And so now that we do, people are making better, quote unquote, better teams that turn into worse teams because it's a peer-to-peer, right? We're living in this market. We're playing against other humans. So not everything is about all the levers that used to be things that we could gain an edge. It's about what our opponents are doing. And yeah, again, just to wrap up, I was going to say, you mentioned like the correlated ownership thing, and this was like the shining example of it for sure. We'll get into as the season goes on more NBA stuff, but I think it's particularly interesting in NBA because of slates like last night where we get like the Sixers with freaking everybody out, right? No Embiid, no Tobias Harris, no Ben Simmons, no Matisse Thybulle, but like outside of Drummond, who is basically just a lock, it's like who? I mean, you can project those guys how you want, but like who's the best play? Like it's a crapshoot. Flip a coin. Who knows? Maybe it's Maxey game. Maybe it's Shake game. Maybe it's Danny Green. Maybe it's Seth Curry. Maybe it's George Niang. Right? I don't know. You tell me. And so, but people see they all look good. They all project fine, but not amazing. And so that's what, like, for me, like I just faded it. I'm just playing Drummond and like let my opponents make the mistakes. Like I didn't end up getting Tyrese Maxey, who was the one who had the good game, but like I didn't have everybody else, and like my opponents had all those guys, right? So it's like I can survive Tyrese Maxey scoring 40 fantasy points, but I can't survive forcing in George Niang and him scoring 18 or whatever. And so I just know all the ownership is going to pile onto that situation, just like we knew all the ownership was going to pile onto this Ravens game. And it's like, look, I know, like, if I really truly want to, like, again, to your point of, if I want to retroactively go back and be like, I need to pick the best plays, I probably knew I needed one of those Sixers, right? You probably needed Tyrese Maxey, but it's like, how the fuck how do you pick that, right? I don't know, but I'm trying to win first place in this contest. So the easiest way for me to get there is to just be like Lamar, Hollywood, Jefferson, Dalvin, Thielen, Andrews, see ya, X. Not worrying about you, right? Same thing. Niang, Maxey, whatever. One of you guys are going to do well, but like I don't care. I'm just going to X you out, and we'll kick the, especially in NBA. Then you get the late swap possibilities and all that different kinds of stuff. Guys sitting out. So I think it's going to be a particularly interesting conversation around this and how it evolves with NBA, kind of really getting going now.
Right. So if you have any comments, obviously you can put them in the YouTube chat or send them in. If you have any questions at theoryofdfs.com. Erik Beimfohr is on Twitter, and at spikeweek.com if you want to play some best ball stuff. And you could always find me at BlenderHD on Twitter and getting the Masterclass, right? The 15-hour DFS Masterclass, Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, at theoryofdfs.com.